this is it. This is the announcement that I've been waiting forever to make. The final release of the 4th edition of the Basic Fantasy Role-Playing Game, along with 4 of our existing books, 3 adventure books, the BF1 Morgan's Fort, DC1 Tales from the Laughing Dragon, and KH1 The Black Apple Brew, along with the Basic Fantasy Equipment Emporium. All 5 of those books are in the process of being released. Some are already available. We have to wait for Amazon KDP to go through the process of approving all of them, so there may be some delay, it may be a little uneven. If you're wanting to buy all 5 books, just wait a little bit and they'll all be available. All the books are available on Lulu now, but of course Lulu's shipping can be different and prices are different, so choose whatever option is best for you. And great. As far as publication goes on DriveThruRPG, that is planned, but DriveThruRPG is a lot harder to work with. It is a lot slower process to get works done through them, through their printing company, Lightning Source. Covers are more difficult to create, to get the colors right. It is entirely possible. I won't put all 5 books out there. It's fairly likely, in fact, that I'll just do the core rules in both hardback and paperback. But it's here. We finally reached the day. After months of work, diligent work by everyone. I want to thank the whole team who worked on this, from the guys who appeared out of nowhere to do the SRD removal. I don't think we could have done this without doing the SRD removal the way we did, documenting publicly every single bit. Oh, this is Cole, my cat, my new cat. I've got old cats too, but he's a new one. I don't think we could have gotten through the process. Well, no, not just got through the process of SRD removal. We needed to document it. We needed to have a public record of everything that was found and that it was replaced. I don't want to leave any possibility for anybody thinking that we've plagiarized any single bit of text. That, you know, in the legal sense of plagiarism, in the legal sense of copyright infringement. I don't want anybody to look at this and think that we've done anything we shouldn't have. We were meticulous. And I want to thank all the people who volunteered to do that, who just came out of nowhere and started doing it as soon as I put out my manifesto. My call to action for all the people who participate in the project. The existing team, the existing editing team, James Lemon, Al Vetter, Tim Fox, and everybody else whose names I have neglected to call, who are regular editing team or production team members. The artists, many artists who jumped in and provided materials, and everybody who got in the forums or on the Facebook group or in the Discord, particularly those of you who were participating in the forum, who made suggestions and who helped me with corrections, helped me find all the little errors. I'm sure there are still errors in the books, but one thing that's probably going to be polarizing is the new cover design. I'm sure that many people are going to tell me how much they hate this. I'm sorry, folks. Many other people are going to tell me that they like it or that they don't care. And in the end, this was the creative decision. All the covers are going to be bordered this way. The border wraps all the way around the book. So the crenellations go all the way around. Now this is an early proof. There are some glitches on the cover, so if you notice anything irregular, take a no prize out of inventory, but those errors shouldn't be in the final print. So all the books will be like this, with this wraparound crenellation. My goals here were, number one, this is Eric Wilson's artwork. It's one of the only things I actually commissioned, the only thing I ever actually asked for. Eric did a beautiful job creating the art that has graced our cover since the 2nd edition. There's no way I would change that. And at the same time, the crenellated border is a standard feature of our covers and has been from the beginning. So it was not going anywhere either. But I promised that it would be possible to look across a room and see somebody with a basic fantasy book and know that it was a 4th edition, or at least a new edition version. Now, Other than the core rules, we didn't change the edition numbers of any of the other books. Very little of the text actually changed. And most of it was stuff that needed to be changed before we did the transition. There was basically no SRD text in any of the other books. Everything else we have has been created more or less from scratch by our many project members. I say more or less. There are occasional dependencies, like DC-1, Tales from the Laughing Dragon. It's based on the Dragon Claw Barony, done by Daryl King. But it was legitimately done that way. That was by agreement with the original author, who's credited in the book, according to his wishes. So, you know, original to the sense anyway that it needs to be. Original in every rational, legal, reasonable sense that we could imagine. But the core rules had a lot of SRD text, and we had to remove and rewrite a lot of stuff. Despite the extensive rewriting, despite the extensive revisions of the textual materials, we have retained the rules behavior, the player-facing rules, much the same as they've always been. There are a very few changes. Some of them were errata from before. There were a couple of places where I encountered mistakes I made a long time ago. In fact, there's a change to the sleep spell. The sleep spell in the previous editions specified creatures less than 4 hit dice were affected, and creatures more than 4 hit dice were not. Any mathematician will tell you that actually leaves 4 hit dice out, and that was not intentional. It limited the power of the sleep spell a little more than in other games that have a similar spell, and I didn't like that. That was not really my intent. Surprisingly, nobody noticed it for a long time, but once I noticed it, I knew it needed to be changed. So I've revised that. I fixed that in this edition. There are a very, very few things that change. One of the things that we are doing on the back covers of the other books, I don't have any other proofs at this point, and on the title pages of basically everything, not the title page, I'm sorry, on the copyright page of more or less everything, we're putting, I'll put it in on the screen for you to see, we're putting in the Basic Fantasy Compatibility logo, compatible with all editions, because everything we have really is. If you buy any of, or download, you have to buy them, any of the previous materials and the materials that were published under the OGL, if you have them from before and you want to continue using them, they're going to work perfectly fine. There's almost nothing that's changed, almost nothing that is going to affect your game. You should not experience difficulty using any materials that we have published as part of the Basic Fantasy Project from the very beginning with the newest edition. Or using new edition materials of Game Adventures with your second or third edition or even first edition if you've got one, rulebooks. It all works together. There is really nothing substantial changed, despite the, as I say, extensive rewriting. Now, there's new additions. The core rules have a lot of new monsters. For example, there was a period of time when we thought we were going to have to remove the kobold. Before we found out that in fact, we did not need to remove the kobold, and we created a work-alike monster to fill the spot that was maybe a little controversial. The Barkling, which is a dog-faced humanoid. And here we have the beginning of the monster section. I'll put it on the screen for you. Gabe Fua's excellent Barkling artwork and my workup of them statistically. They are a little different mechanically and quite a bit different flavor-wise from the standard kobold that you're accustomed to. We also had situations with other monsters we thought we were going to have to remove. The Displacer has been replaced with the Deceiver, which was a monster from the Iron Falcon game. I did not switch back to the original Displacer. I actually mechanically like the Deceiver better. It is a little different. Our Blink Dog is a little different. Nothing that I think is going to be significant. In fact, one of the problems I had with the Blink Dog was figuring out how to play it in game, how to make it work with the initiative system. The new rules clarify everything you need to know about how to make a Blink Dog behave properly in your game and make your combats not cause you to tear out what little hair you might have left if you look like me. we initially had a replacement for the Rust Monster. We discovered we could keep the Rust Monster, but we kept the Iron Bane with Martin Serena's artwork in the game. So we now have 2 rusting monsters. That'll make all your fighters sleep easier at night, knowing that there's 2 different possible creatures that might come along and rust their armor right off of them. I added to the Elementals list based on work I had done for Iron Falcon in the Iron Falcon Handbook of Monsters. There were additional elemental types that I wanted to include. Briefly, the tradition of 4 classical elements is a strictly European tradition. Other cultures on Earth have had other traditions about what the elements actually were. I'm told that in a particular, some Asian traditions, there are 5 different ones, including things like metal elementals and wood. And I wanted to include the opportunity for the game master to build his or her elementals exactly how they wanted to. And so I did that. I've included elemental types of a variety of different types and the devices to summon them. But the game master is encouraged to limit the elemental groups to the ones that he or she wants in their own campaign, to work with their own theory of how magic should work or how the elements work. And that's fine. That's what it's for. We added a giant type, the mountain giant. We revamped the dragons quite a bit in terms of the look and feel, but mechanically they're much the same as they were. So if you encounter a gold dragon in an older adventure and you bring it into the new game, it's a cloud dragon. If you encounter a red dragon in the old game, you have a fire dragon. All the dragons, mountain dragon. All the dragons are described by their terrain, where they are normally found, rather than by their color. And their colors have been amended slightly, given more, not a different flavor, more of an explanation of what they look like, more of an explanation of how they are different in their appearances. My thought was, if I was trying to avoid Wizards of the Coast's art, and I don't mean art in the drawing sense, but art in the form of the things that they've created that are copyrightable. One of the best ways to do that would be to add my own art, to add my own feel and flavor to things. But I've made a very careful effort to ensure that the old materials and the new materials will still mesh, even with these changes, even with those changes to the way the monsters are assembled and so forth. The old and new materials should just work together. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with calling a mountain dragon a red dragon. That's more or less the color it is, and it shoots fire out of its mouth when it breathes on you. I did expand the definition of the cloud dragon. I expanded its capabilities, gave more variation to them. Cloud dragons are rarely antagonists anyway in a game. They're usually considered good dragons. But I gave more flavor. Again, I gave more to it. There are other instances, look through the book, you'll find them, other instances where I've expanded the flavor of monsters predominantly to make the game more interesting. And, as I said, we've gotten a lot of new artwork. This new book is just jam-packed. The original core rules, I actually don't have a 3rd edition back here. Interesting. Except in Italian. Yeah, well, anyway. But there's a lot more artwork. The old book was something like 170 pages. There are 201 numbered pages in this book, plus the unnumbered front pages and an extra page at the back. And most of the reason for that expansion is the new monsters and all the new art. And there's a lot of gorgeous stuff in there. As much as possible, I've retained the old art. There are a couple of old pieces that we dropped because they caused flavor issues with the way the new game is put together. But every effort has been applied to try to make this game mesh with the existing material. Now, regarding the previous editions, it is my intention that the 3rd edition remain in print as long as possible. So if you want to buy the 3rd edition, go right ahead and buy the 3rd edition. I am going to add a little bit to the blurb for that on Amazon and Lulu, and eventually on DriveThruRPG, explaining the 3rd and the 4th edition, and let people make their own decision as to which edition that they want to buy. So that's something that you need to be aware of. I'm actually going to go ahead and replace adventure modules with the newer editions in print. Very, very little has changed there. Like I said, a lot of text changed in this book. Very little text changed in those other books. Some new artwork, a lot of corrections. If there was SRD text, we removed it, but there was very, very little, none at all to speak of in any of the adventure modules, and very little in anything else that needed to be removed. But so I'm going to just go ahead and replace the existing editions with the new editions. There's not any real reason to keep the old ones around. I will probably leave the older edition coil bounds available for a while on Lulu. There are a few people who like the coil bound adventures. I get that occasionally. Can't do the wraparound crenellations with a coil bound book, so that's something I'm still thinking about. It's not impossible to convince me to change my mind. Just come out and give me a good argument, and we'll see what happens. Please, not in the comments for the video, put them on the forum. I don't really carry on conversations about the game anyplace else. If you are wanting to participate in convincing me to do things differently and actually submitting your own materials for our publication or whatever, you got to join the forum. We do everything there in public. I've had a lot of people tell me they don't like forums. I'm sorry, folks. Forums have memory. They have a memory that is better, is easier to access. History is easier to access than the history of a Discord channel or the history of a Facebook group. And more importantly, I control the forum. I make backups of its database. I keep copies of the information on my own computers away from the internet so that if something gets tampered with or destroyed or a server goes down or something, I don't lose everything. I've got no control over what Facebook does with a Facebook group. I've got no control over what Discord does with any channels. Anything could happen. Anything could go wrong. I don't want to keep our history in somebody else's basket. So I keep it all on the forum. I do it all on the forum. And please don't email me things. Don't email me comments or questions about the game. Post them on the forum. Participate in our group. Participate in our project. You post on the forum, you're going to get answers from other people quicker than you are from me. Martin Serena, Demirag on the forum, reads my mind. I swear to God, the man knows what I'm thinking about how the rules are supposed to work most of the time better than I do. And his answers are as good as mine. Other people are Kevin Smoot, James Lemon, who's the senior editor and basically production director, keeps me in line, keeps me moving. Their answers are as good as anybody's. But more importantly, if you ask on the forum, no matter who answers the question, more people than just you get an answer. So please, join our forum, join us, join our project. If you've got something to contribute, contribute. If you just want to lurk, that's fine, but that's where the answers are. That's where we answer questions like, oh, I don't know, when is this book going to be published? And you almost certainly follow the link to this video from either Facebook or from the forum, because maybe from the Discord, because that's where I'm posting this stuff. But the actual knowledge, the actual information, the history of the game, the decision-making process is exposed to the public. Nobody has to question what we did in the back room, because we don't do anything in the back room. We do everything in public. That sounds terrible. But that's how we do it. That's how we've always done it. We've always kept our stuff out in the public, and we're going to keep doing that. I haven't mentioned it up to this point, but of course this whole process began because of the OGL debacle. And I like that word, debacle. It works perfectly in this situation. The whole business with Wizards trying to cancel, saying they were going to cancel the OGL, worse, saying it to people in back rooms, in private, but it got leaked. You can't do that. People are going to leak that stuff on you. It got leaked, and people discovered that their plan was to cancel the OGL and apparently to make our books illegal. And then they backpedaled and they said, well, they would allow people to continue publishing whatever they had published up to the date that they canceled it. Hello, we are a growing, living project. Basic Fantasy Project is growing, is living, it's ongoing, it's continuous. And they backed down and they took a Creative Commons license at the last moment for their SRD. And this is great, because I like Creative Commons. I like Creative Commons so much that all the new materials, all the new text materials are Creative Commons licensed. I've got it right there, got the little Creative Commons logo, got it on the back of the cover, right there, to tell you that we do an attribution share-alike license, meaning that if you create materials that are derivative, that you've actually derived materials from our books, you have to put them under the same kind of license. You're required to share alike. We shared it with you, you must share with other people. If you come to me and you say that this is cramping your style at making a commercial venture based on our game, we're not, I'm sorry, I don't feel for you. I don't hate you. I'm not against capitalism. Feel free to create materials and sell them. But if you're going to use the things we created for free to create your thing to make a profit off of, you've got to at least share. You've got to share your work. Artwork in the books, as always, is separately licensed. Artwork in all of our books is licensed to me personally for use in the Basic Fantasy Project books. It is the only thing that we retain control over for branding purposes. Anybody who creates a book like this, creates their own rule book and chooses to use any substantial part of our book, may not use most of the artwork, the vast majority of the art, and I mean almost everything. There are just 2 or 3 items that are permitted to be used. Almost everything in this book is prohibited to be used by someone who's creating a competing product. If it's not published through the project, you legally have to remove the art. And this is, as I say, this is the only brand protection that we have. We have no brand protection. I'm sharing everything. Attribution share alike is not a very limiting license. All the text in this book is accessible to you to use for your own publication, required only that you publish it under the same rules that I did, or that we did, but I'm the rights holder of the core rules. Everyone else owns their own work. Every other book is the work of its author or authors, and contributors in many cases. And sometimes there are many, many copyrights on a book. And I know this is a long video for an announcement. This is the reason for the specific choice of the books that we chose to publish. Those 4 books were the first 4 that we could clearly get the rights to. We could clearly get the authors to all agree, all the contributors who had a copyright interest in it to agree to publish under a new license, to change the license from the OGL to the Creative Commons license. We would like to publish everything under the open game, under the Creative Commons Attribution Share Alike license. That's the intention. Everything new going forward has to be that way. If you submit something to our forum, you have to publish it under that rule. Getting the old OGL materials changed is going to be difficult. Things like the field guides, where every monster is the copyright property of its author, puts us in a bind. We have to get each and every author to agree to relicense their materials under Creative Commons before we can add them to any of our books. So that's going to affect the field guides. We were just on the verge of releasing the second field guide in print and a new edition of the first field guide. All that's on hold at this point. It is fairly likely that we're going to go through the field guide materials, all 3 field guides that are in development, and everything we can get a clear license change on is going to get combined into one book. So there'll be just one field guide at some point. Unfortunately, that field guide probably won't have all the monsters in it that were in the original field guides, because we may not be able to find all the authors. If you are an author who has created materials that you shared with the Basic Fantasy Project and you haven't sent me a consent to relicense your materials as Creative Commons, please do. And if you don't agree with that, if you don't want to relicense away from the OGL to the open game, to the Creative Commons license, if you don't want to do that, please at least let me know that. let me know so we can find and excise your work from our body of materials and not continue publishing it. Because we don't want to do that. We want to get away from the open game license. So if you're an author and you haven't sent me a consent, please do. If you're not going to send me a consent, if you don't consent, let me know that so I know. You can do that by email. You can do that by private message through the forum. That's probably the best way to do it. But either way is fine. Just let me know so I have a record. Actually, if you're going to send me a consent, it's best to send that to Solomoriah at basicfantasy.org. Look in the description. It's down there. Send that by email because that is where I'm keeping my record of consents. But let me know. Let me know what the situation is. Let me know that you are consenting or that you're not going to consent so that we can get you where you need to be, get your materials where they need to be in the project. Unfortunately, this also applies to things like the contest series, the adventure anthology series. We need to get consent from the authors of the individual adventures published in those books. And that is going to be troublesome, I know. It is fairly likely that a new adventure anthology is going to be put together at some point that's going to include all the adventures from the first 3 adventure anthology books, which aren't even all in print yet. All the adventures we can get clear rights to, and we will have to omit stuff that we cannot get rights for. So that's going to be awkward. Yeah, I think that pretty much covers it. Yay, the new 4th edition is out, and soon all 4 of those books, if they're not out already, will be available on Lulu and Amazon. Look for the link in the description that goes to the Get It Now page that will show you all the links to all the places you can buy all this stuff, existing materials as well as the new 4th edition and the new Creative Commons edition materials. So great, and thanks to everybody who helped get us there. It was a huge number of people. If you like I said, if you haven't sent me a consent for materials that you've submitted to the Basic Fantasy Project, please do. Please let me know, or let me know if you're not going to, just so I can get your stuff handled properly. Get it either into the upcoming queue or out the door. Because I've got a lot of people who've contributed that I have not heard from. If you're an artist and you contributed because you licensed the materials to me in the first place, nothing's changing there. So you don't need to contact me if you're an artist, an existing artist who's already submitted materials. We're good. If you're a new artist who'd like to join the project, jump into our artwork forum, read the art submission guidelines, start a thread, and start sharing your stuff. And as we get to where we need materials, we will start mining the new materials as well as the vast quantity of older materials we have. I cannot believe, still at this point, the outpouring of support that I've had for this game, both over the years just in creating it, and then since the OGL debacle in January, the number of people who've just jumped in and diligently worked to help us extract ourselves from the mess and move forward. I guess one last thing I have to say, if it does happen that Wizards does decide to outlaw the OGL and does insist that we remove old materials, we will have to do that. But as long as they haven't done that, as long as they have not tried to cancel the OGL, or even if they do, but they continue to allow the old materials to stay out there, as long as possible, any materials that we can't update to Creative Commons will stay available under the OGL for purchase, for download, whatever. So that's where we're going forward. That's our future. Yeah, thanks for watching. You can comment in the section below here on YouTube, but really join us on the forum. We'd love to see you there. Thank you for your time, and I hope to talk to you all later. Thanks. Bye.